Hey friends, my name's Gabrielle and welcome to FrumiousReads, and today we are talking about Book 2 in the His Dark Materials trilogy, The Subtle Knife by Philip Pullman. And oh boy, I have some thoughts on this book and I can't wait to share them with you. So, The Subtle Knife. Where shall we begin? In this book, we pick up actually not with Lyra, but with a new protagonist named Will Perry. And Will lives in a parallel world which is very similar to our current world. He is on the run from some men who want something that his mother has in a parallel world. This is the same world that at the end of book 1, Lyra finds herself in. So Lyra and Will meet in this parallel world known as Sidagazi. As they meet in Sidagazi, they find out more about why parallel worlds exist and about this device called the Subtle Knife, which allows you to cut in between worlds and create your own openings. We also get to see from the perspectives of other characters that were introduced in the first book, as they too are following Lyra into the parallel worlds and trying to figure out what's going on. They're also introduced to these beings called specters, which essentially prey on adults and adults' daemons, and they kind of just suck the life force out of the adult humans and leave them as kind of just walking shells. While he's on the run from the men, he accidentally murders one of them. In order to escape, he finds himself, apparently Lord Asriel is recruiting creatures from other worlds to help fight his war. And what he's fighting against God, or the creator. So he's recruiting creatures, but that's like mentioned very little in this book. So I would have loved to see more of that as well. I'm going to start with the pros first, because unlike my review of the Golden Compass, where I started with the cons because I didn't have that many, I don't have many pros for this book, which makes me really upset, and I forgot about that until I was rereading it. I forgot about how much I did not actually like The Subtle Knife. Some pros. We get to see perspectives of characters such as Will Scoresby, who's the aeronaut who helps Lyra escape a lot of situations in the first book. We also get to see from the perspectives of the witches, and from their perspectives as adults, we get to learn more about these specters. So that's really interesting to kind of see the worlds from their perspective, because they are privy to things that Will and Lyra can't actually see. Another pro of this is that we get to see kind of how Miss Coulter, who's introduced as one of the antagonists in the first book, how she kind of has this network that works through these parallel worlds, and how the church is kind of manipulating this to work to their advantage. Oh, and it furthers the storyline, so that's always good. It's always good to keep the story going. Having said all that, here's the biggest reason why I feel like The Subtle Knife falls flat as readers. It's basically used to just have a ton of exposition. It is the kind of just a step is taken in order to build for the third and final book, which is where a lot more action and a lot more conflict happens. It doesn't come off as its own book. It doesn't have kind of any individuality that we see in the Golden Compass or even later in the Amber Spyglass. I want to enjoy, but it's overall it comes off as very boring. You end up skimming a lot because it's just so much explaining and so much that we didn't have in the first book that it really was a surprise to get it in the second book. Another con I have is Lyra in general. What happened in Lyra to Lyra's entire character? All of the pros that I mentioned, how she's sneaky and she's clever and cunning and manipulative, none of that exists in this second book. It's almost like we're reading about a completely different girl. I feel like part of that's because we're seeing Lyra from Will's perspective, and Will does not at first like Lyra that much, but then all of a sudden they start getting along. Lyra is still portrayed as kind of like this helpless creature, which I can see if they portrayed like the trauma that she went through in the first book is affecting her actions in the second book, but that doesn't feel like what's happening. It more just feels like since Will is there and he's like the big strong guy who can take care of himself and he knows so much more and he's much more like worldly and like people oriented than Lyra is. Lyra's kind of just pushed into this like helpless, doesn't know how to interact or do things with people type of character, and that's not who she is. So this entire book was me just going like, what happened to Lyra? Where is the Lyra that we read about? And what happened to her characterization that made it change so much? And part of that made me not like Will, because he's not seeing the Lyra that we got to see. He's seeing this instead helpless girl who can't like do anything on her own, and it makes the book really hard to get through. Other than those two cons, the only other thing that I will say before I just just kind of go and start nitpicking things is the fact that I mentioned that we get different perspectives and that's a pro, but also getting so many perspectives almost every other chapter really jumbles the storyline. It's hard to keep track of who's doing what and where people are in the novel and what the flow is supposed to be. It jumbles everything, so it makes it really hard to keep track of what's happening to each person. Overall, I think I would give the second book about 2 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever read, but honestly, I wasn't impressed with this book. I forgot that this was the book I liked least in the series. Those are my thoughts, and that is the rating I would give it. So if you have read it, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Ultimately, I feel like this is the weakest book in the His Dark Materials series. Love to hear from you, love to know your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Which book do you think is the weakest in the His Dark Materials trilogy? I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Oh man, that was a whew. The other video was so long because I really enjoyed it. This video is very short because I don't have a lot of good things or a lot of things to say about it in general. That's all I have for you guys today. I would love to know what you guys thought of this video in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I upload bookish videos twice a week as well as reaction videos whenever something cool comes out that I want to react to. But for now, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Okay, bye.